Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very special session that we're having today. We're instigating a new brand of sessions that I think, Bertie, we should call them Development International or Development Stream. The kind of thing that we're talking about. And today we're starting an interview series that Bertie is going to do a couple interviews with people that he have great relationships with, or that he has a lot of honor for and that he respects. As you can hear, there's a lot of noise in my background, and Bertie is at another office. And so for those that are looking, we are in the load shedding world. That means that here in South Africa, our power just gets cut very, very abruptly, and we have to make a plan. So that's what we did. We want to bring you value today, and the guest that we have for you is absolutely phenomenal. There's a great relationship and interaction that's already happened between Bertie and this person. Now, I remember about 2 years ago when Bertie and myself was working on LinkedIn, building relationships and reaching out to people. And this person reached out to us. We were very honored to start the relationship, and Bertie started meeting and speaking to this person. The person that I'm talking about is Mauritz van Zambeek. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I can see he's nodding his head in the studio. And so we are very honored. He's the first person that said yes to one of our sessions, and it's going to be a phenomenal conversation. Our topic today is leadership and masterminds, and I'm assuming there's a lot more that's going to come out of that. So I'm going to bring Mauritz into the studio right now. He's prepared and ready. Hello, Mauritz. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to a great conversation between you and Bertie today. Thank you, Bertie. You can take it from here.
Thank you, Ivan. Much appreciated. And yes, Mauritz, good day to you. It's great seeing your face again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to speak with you again, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Yes, I'm certainly am myself, because I see you as a source of knowledge. You're actually a special person, and I would ask you to start off with just to give us a brief background about yourself. I know you well enough to do it, but I would prefer if you can just take us through your background as philosopher, etc., and introduce yourself to the audience. Thank you, Mauritz.
Thank you for the warm welcome. My background is in philosophy. I studied it for quite some years, up until 2013. I was on a vehement quest to learn all about wisdom. Since I was a little boy, I am talking with a monk. I heard the term wisdom teacher, and that was a deep that hadn't. So since then, I went on a search. What is wisdom? And that question was always a guiding question, a leading question for me. Then I found out there is a study in wisdom called philosophy. So I started studying that. I did travels. I also visited South Africa then, and that was in 2007. And in 2013, I ventured on a thought leadership path, tried out different modalities of leadership, and that's all met on LinkedIn in 2018, 2019. And since then, we kept in contact, talked about thought leadership, about coaching. We were members of same mastermind groups. And that's where we are today.
Fantastic, Mauritz. Yes, I'm proud to say that Mauritz, when he came to South Africa to study, he went to my alma mater, my University of Stellenbosch. So that was excellent choice, Mauritz, from your side.
Beautiful region.
It absolutely the best. One's own university is always the best, but Stellenbosch has got a special place in my heart, and I trust that it grew on you too. Thanks for that overview, Mauritz. That's how I met you, and that's how I understand your philosophies and your point of departure, is that you are very much focused on leadership, and lately leadership through creation of masterminds to grow your audience. And I may just say to those that are listening, as I say, I've met Mauritz over LinkedIn, and we started chatting because we had a lot in common, a meeting of minds. I often talk about leadership, but one step further, I talk about beyondership, which is just one step I consider just beyond leadership, is when that leader, even the leaders, sometimes is blocked and get to a point where they feel they can't progress, or they don't want to progress, or they don't know how to progress. That is when the people get to that T-junction in the street. It sometimes around and the others go beyond that. They see the opportunities on the other side. And that is also my philosophy, and that is why in my logo I use the eagle, because I view the eagle as that individual, the bird that can fly the highest. We know that the eagle can see beyond every obstacle. In other words, he creates his own future by doing that. So I met Mauritz. He introduced me to Masterminds. I became part of Masterminds probably back in 2018, 2019. Some of that Masterminds are still running, and that is what put me in my thought of vision with imagination and creation with that. But enough said about me. Mauritz, your views on leadership and where you've taken, you've spoken about it, you've just addressed it, your the concept of wisdom and where you've learned from monks and taken it from there. Leadership. How do you see it, and how would you define that?
And leadership has, of course, many aspects about it. It's first of all daring to take the lead, to venture into uncharted territory somehow, and it often starts with a wonderment of life, of how things are happening, and if you want something to be improved upon, it's not always clear how that will turn out to be, and how you can create it. So leadership is then first and foremost coming to a vision of what is possible, and pulling that vision in, knowing how to communicate it with team members, with other people you work with, and from there developing a strategy, paving a pathway, and actually executing on the vision, and making the impossible possible. And I think then to take that a step further, to go beyond, as you mentioned it, that what is good leadership then? Of course, there's a huge discussion about it, but very basically, good leadership is when teams are aligned, when people work together to a common goal from a common cause for a greater benefit of all involved, and without doing harm in the process.
There's an old, an argument that is as old as the mountains, where they said leaders are born, or no, leaders are created. What is your view on that?
That's a difficult debate in philosophy between nature and nurture. It is said that there are natural born leaders, of course, but many leadership skills can be learned throughout life. Taken that someone has all the doesn't have disabilities from the get-go, but then still you can have lesser developed forms of leadership, taking leadership over one's own life, for example. That's where it often starts, in learning how to make decisions, being flexible when decisions turn out to be wrong, and then assess new decisions. So it's a delicate discussion. There are natural born leaders, I think, perhaps through genetic heritage, but most of it could be developed through nurture, to upbringing, to teaching, training, and coaching throughout the process.
Thank you. Before I expand on that, I just want to take the one step back and talk about management. your view on that in terms of how one see management and how one see leadership, because so often people in managerial positions refer to themselves as leaders. But in my view, what I'm lately seeing is that the concept of I versus we. Uh, when I look at people that as managers, I say the manager's function is to produce and create, and they talk about I and me. But leaders, they normally talk about us and we. Uh, what is your view on the difference between leadership and management?
There, of course, are many layers to it. You can split it out to deep details, but the basic point of this, in my opinion, that leaders are more about vision, strategy, and aligning teams, taking care of that communication between layers and departments work well. And management is more steering of the process, monitoring it, motivating people on the work floor, and it's more a hands-on approach. So there are aspects of leadership in being a manager as well, in that you have to take a lead in actually going for the fulfillment of a task, or that the team member fulfills the task. But if there's no clear vision, no clear purpose behind it, which is the role of the leader to define that and to keep that top of mind, then the management could become steerless. So that's the difference, I think. Yeah.
I love that, because I especially is attuned to your using the term vision, because I too believe that management leadership becomes the vision of the organization, and they step into that role, into that position. And if that the vision is set clear enough, they are responsible for pulling the organization or that company or whatever they may be into the future. While management, because they are on the coal face, they are just taking the company, they're pushing the company into the future, because they're doing it. Their goals are interim goals, why the leader is looking at quantum leaps into the future for this organization, and in the process setting the pace and creating that vision, and as I say, with imagination. That is the most important role, and that is why we talk about we and us, because leaders become part of the success and the growth of the organization. They lead by example. There's for now, just the name just eludes me, but there's a very senior manager. He's in retirement today. But he once said, when we ask about leadership and what's the role of the leader, and that he's a CEO of the companies and so forth. And he was saying that individual, that leader, their office is their shoes, because they need to be amongst their people, because only from being amongst the people, they lead effectively. You don't lead for sitting in the back in an office. The leader needs to be there. And I will never forget that. Saying the leader, his office is his shoes, because that takes him amongst his people. What do you think about that statement?
That's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah. I had some conversations in the past few weeks that were on this topic as well, and that CEOs sometimes don't care about doing the execution. They only want to say what has to be done, but they are chief executive officers, so there has to be some kind of execution in what they do as well, and not only armchair directives, that they only do armchair talks or giving out directives from that in an ivory tower. That's a often heard statement, But on the other side, when I talk with CEOs, they are really busy with managing and talking with a lot of people in the organization and also out of the organization with different interests. So it could become a burden for them that if they wear the office as the shoes, the shoes become too tight, so to speak, or get worn out too quickly, because they are only working all the time, 70 to 80 hours. People constantly ask for their attention, and I think other people in the organization, that's where then different forms of leadership could take more hold. If they take some kind of ownership over their position, more responsibility of producing better results within their segment of the work, that could relieve the CEO of stress and thus help the CEO in turn become a better CEO as well. So I think good leadership has eyes for these intricate exchanges of ownership, of power, taking the lead from where one is in its own position.
Okay, but surely
sometimes
that leader, that CEO, due to necessity, needs to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty a bit, and a part of, a bigger part of their function becomes more operational than strategic. You find that happens. Did COVID, for example, bring more of that to the fore, or did COVID create more leadership responsibilities out there to lead the organization through the troubled times? What do you say? More hands-on involvement lately, or more strategic?
I think it's both in this case. Last year, that first of all, that with pivoting strategy that they could start was for a lot of leaders on top of mind, that they not necessarily needed to fire people, or that they could come up with a strategy that could lead the company through the crisis. So that's one aspect of it, but then of course also showing how it could be done. That, like a lot of companies weren't used to work mostly remote and online, so they had to take the lead by doing that, by organizing, for example, these kind of meetings like you do now, which shows then to the people in the organization, it can be done. Our leader does it too. He goes, he rolls up the sleeve, and he is present in meetings online with people now who are not used to it normally. So.
Okay. Yeah, we want to talk about. We said we want to talk about leadership and masterminds. And the reason why I brought in Mastermind is because I know that you are a great believer in masterminds, and that you've also created masterminds, but also that you enjoy the one-to-one interaction in terms of your growth. Your focus on leadership has taken you to create mastermind groups and on virtual and one-on-one. Is that very much still your focus area? Is development of leadership and creating opportunities for people to grow?
Yes, that's still what I do and what I organize, now more into the philanthropy industry sector, because there's a big rise of online millionaires apparently who want to do good, but are not trained in it, and old school philanthropists and other more conservative foundations. They notice that there are big shifts happening, and sometimes they cannot pivot quick enough or develop new learning programs or visions for that. And what I noticed is that forming mastermind groups and facilitating it is a bit different than leadership roles. Facilitating is also allowing to come forth what arises, and that's the power of the mastermind, which is something that goes beyond the mere individual. And then what comes up in the groups is often surprising, because it's a safe space, a confidential space, where people can trust that what they say is not ridiculed. That opens up new avenues of thought.
We're breaking up a bit there.
The philanthropic aspect of leadership. Am I back now? Okay, what I noticed by the pivot I made into the philanthropy space is that it's not directly led by KPIs, but more by what real people notice directly. And so it's more human focused than statistic focused. I find that a very interesting thing to notice.
That's an interesting development. The bring of the philanthropists into your organization. What do we can elaborate on that, but for at first I would like to know your key requirements for effective mastermind group. What would you say is that? I know you've mentioned in terms of honesty, sincerity, and confidentiality. Could you elaborate on the key requirements that you're setting in your mastermind groups? Online, myself and Ivan on Tuesday spent almost an hour talking about masterminds, effectiveness of masterminds, the development thereof, and so forth. But thanks for sharing.
Thank you. It's there are many forms in which masterminds can be organized, but what I noticed that works really well is when there is a structure behind it, which allows for forms of free thinking. And that sounds like a paradox, but for example, first, when people are not that well acquainted yet, they first get acquainted. There's a welcome and state a topic at first that could structure the conversation and the discussion. So it works really well when there is some kind of preparation through worksheets or a study of a text. Then at the beginning of a mastermind, there's a moment of shared contemplation, and from there everybody gets equal as much as possible, because some people like to listen more and other people like to talk more. That there's equal time and space for someone to develop their thoughts and ask questions and support.
So facilitation obviously is important.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your ultimate size of a mastermind group, and then second to that, a question would be: you talk about philanthropy. How do you get a mastermind group together? How do you structure it, and where do you get participants from?
Now, the past years, it's mostly from LinkedIn. The participants, I did outreach, and or people reach out to me, and then we engage in a conversation, and from there we see if we can form a mastermind group or not. And what I noticed is that 4 to 6 people works really well, because then you have like 60 to 90 minutes of intense thinking, and of course there's also a place for some humor and sharing of jokes and anecdotes that could only spice up the conversation and the ideas and how it turns out in one's life. Of course you're free to do it longer. There are people who have much larger groups, but I notice also when you sit down at the desk, it's also healthy to get up after 60 to 90 minutes for stretching. And you can build it in your mastermind groups as well. But I noticed that it works really well to keep it to that time frame, because then okay, we have this amount of time. Let's dial in. Let's focus, and then you really get some breakthrough ideas from it.
Great stuff. We talk about leadership and masterminds now. The profile, the general profile, if there's a general profile, I must add, if there's a general profile, what kind of person would be more willing to join a mastermind? Are we talking about leaders? Are we talking about the entrepreneurs? The professional individual that thinks more strategic? What kind of person prefer to join masterminds?
What I notice is that it are people who know there is a next level on what they are trying to accomplish, and they sometimes just need a group where they can share their concerns, their thoughts, without immediately getting judged or criticized. That's so. If one requirement is that one is open-minded and willing to learn more and to achieve more, and that's make sure that there is also good input from that person. Another requirement is that they have some kind of experience where they are specialized in, so to speak. So they bring some add-on value to the other members who are not that specialized in a specific area. So that's also really helpful, that you can, when you have a specific business topic, for example, and you want to grow your business on that segment or aspect of the business, it could be really helpful to talk about it from a different perspective than what a person is used to. So yeah, these kind of requirements, I noticed that when you take care that people live up to that and are very clear on it beforehand, that then the discussions and the conversations become really fruitful and helpful for all the members and participants.
I like that, because what you are sharing with me is very much my thoughts on beyondership. So you're actually defining and describing the beyonders. Those are the kind of people that know there's something beyond the perceived glass ceiling that is keeping them back. They are challenging the norms, constantly wanting to grow because they know they can and they should be. And I enjoy that very much. Thanks for that excellent explanation of that. And I support everything that you've said in terms of my personal view of that. I'd love to test you on one aspect. I'm involved in a company in an HR position, 2 days a week basis, contract basis, which I enjoy very much. It keeps me on my toe and it challenges me all the time. And especially because they're in the IT industry, that is a fast developing organization and field of expertise that they play in. But what I've found that because of COVID, and maybe I'd like us to just talk a little bit about that. Because of COVID and the fact that most of the staff at this stage, almost 100% of the staff is working off-site, we found that the creativity and the innovativeness of the individuals has started to diminish because of the lack of interaction, where people, rub shoulders and share concepts, share challenges and ideas, that almost started to fall down the wayside. And what I've implemented recently is in the organization is mastermind groups inside the organization. We actually draw individuals from different departments and from different areas of expertise together to deliberate and to discuss a concept or idea that the company might have, or a market direction that leadership sees and they give it to that group to pull apart. What do you think of that concept of a mastermind inside an organization?
It's you could call it. There's one concept of it, Mastermind 5. So that means that as soon as there's 6 person, it turns into 2 groups of 3, and then until there's 5 again. What the concept of that does within a company, as you describe it as well, that people from different departments, different layers in the organization come together in smaller mastermind groups, which are well set up. That indeed actives enhance the human factor in companies, and also helps with social bonding and within the company, having a shared space of interest, understanding what other people are doing. That's oftentimes hidden gold to mine in a company, because when they know, when people lower on the corporate ladder don't understand why CEOs make specific decisions, they could consciously or unconsciously work against those decisions, because it doesn't make sense for them why they would execute on it. But when they come together in mastermind groups, and it could also be for 30 minutes or even a very short 15 minutes, not just a meeting, but a very open conversation, then they help in coming together under the and owning vision for development of the company. So I think that's a very good idea to, when it's done virtually now, to at least have a similar type of social cohesion within a company and within teams of different departments. Of course, still a lot goes lost of sub-communication and non-verbal communication when it's online, which is when you are in person with people and shake hands and resonate in the same room. That's still add-on value, but I think we can go back to these kind of meetings as well in the future very soon.
Excellent, Mauritz. As a matter of interest, we have decided to have those meetings in flesh and blood. In other words, we would be in the boardroom setup in order to get that benefit, especially from the start, so that people can feel one another, because virtual is, as you say, it's very impersonal and fairly cold. So we're going to run that, and we're running that in the boardroom, and at first facilitated by an outside facilitator, me, but thereafter we view it as that team and that group, mastermind group, and I like what you say, the mastermind tribes, to create that they will facilitate themselves on a round robin basis, just moving around. The question that comes to mind is that organizations also have challenges with leadership development, middle management, junior management. Would you think that this is also a platform to use, because you've just shared about what senior management, the CEO or the exco, what they believe, what they decide on and share with the organization is not necessarily always accepted. Let's call it accepted easily by the junior echelons of staff in the organization. But when you think that creating leadership, this mastermind tribes as a breeding ground for leadership development, where senior, almost like a level between senior management and the people on the floor?
It could help in coming to mutually shared realities, because oftentimes because of the backgrounds that people have and the living situations they come from when they come to work in a company, their experience of what's happening in the company is completely different. Their paradigm has a different generation of perception about what's going on. So when these, as you explained it, these middle layers where the leadership development happens through a direct exchange between the people of different layers and departments, that could really help to find also common language coming from that, and notify where there are language differences or confusion starts to arise among what otherwise would be a chain between the top leaders and the executioner on the work floor. So I think that's one of the hidden powers to be tapped as well. What I noticed from mastermind groups I was in, that some people were way further with understanding leadership than I was. And it's a bit like what you also see in martial arts with the different belts, that even black belts train together with white belts, because that teaches the black belt members to withhold themselves when necessary to have more control, but also to teach the white belts to rise up to the next belt where they could correct mistakes, etc. But there's a shared system, a shared idea, and you see it in Lean and Six Sigma. They use that metaphor from belts as well. But I think with masterminds, it goes even a bit further, because it's not strictly tied to a method. It has also space for free and creative thinking, and the personal inspiration of the people who participate in it.
I like that example.
So I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thanks very much. But I quite enjoy, you use the word perception, and that is one of the key things that happens in organizations that affects communication, is perceptions. Because you sometimes half truth, half communications, and that floats around the organization in the passage, and people make up their own minds of what was the real story. And that happens effective communication, and often lead to a lot of frustration amongst all levels in the organization. Thanks for that, Mauritz. But Mauritz, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I would like to find out from you. You've recently brought out a book that's available on as an ebook, The God's Eye View. Mm-hmm. Now, I've read your book, and I must admit, not yet in absolute detail, because the way you write your books takes for a lot of thinking. It's just not, and let's call it an easy read for me, that is not as philosophically attuned as you. Just share with the audience and with us just the reason behind your book, the content of your book, and maybe does it fit into your philosophies of leadership, or why did you write the book at all?
It came forth from an article I wrote, of a series of articles I wrote in 2017, 2018. And it was for me also a bit of a closure of the years before, of everything I studied, to bring it all together. And also from there to open up potential avenues of new explication in more understandable language. So not necessarily in the academic jargon, but I can understand it's still not an easy read for people who are not familiar with philosophy. But thank you for reading it and giving me a chance to talk a bit about it. It's The God's Eye View. It's the subtitle is Ultimate Awareness, Absolute Wisdom, and Constant Change. How to handle it all in this fast-paced information age, and we are actually a bit already beyond the information age. But what I studied from philosophy was mostly metaphysics, and that's about the primary principles of reality. And going back to Aristotle, the first principle was called God as unmoved mover. and everything is attracted to it in some loving way, because it is all-encompassing, and it gives peace because it is unmoved. But because of that, it also sets into motion, and it attracts and repels what comes forth from it, in terms of how people understand it, how they deal with it. And it is a constant question for me. What is it? What is love, for example? Why do some people love these kind of activities and these kind of people? Well, other people almost hate it, or start into wars or conflicts. And I think contemplating something like God, from a philosophical point of view, understood as love, that we move from because we love some things, or move toward because we would love some things and activities and people in our life, that could ease up a lot of conflict. So the book is an attempt to grasp it in a larger coherence. What is ultimate awareness? I bring together some notions from different religions and philosophy. What would then be absolute wisdom? I do some suggestions to find out what it could be. I don't proclaim that I have all the wisdom, because it's also a constant question and journey, and research topic as well. A living a life lesson in the making, constantly, and in the unfoldment. And constant change is what we see around us. That is what is happening, and what we also embark upon if we want to go beyond where we are now, if we want to innovate, if we want to improve. But it all has a coherence, and this book is an attempt to describe that coherence, and find ways to deal with the otherwise confusing perspectives and paradigms. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks for giving that overview. You know, Mauritz, that's how I understood you. That's how I met you, and that is how I sort of made a summary of who is Mauritz, and that is what challenging me all the time. Because when I think about leadership, and I think about whether a leader is born or a leader can be developed. I believe that a more effective manager can be developed and grown, an effective manager. But a leader in itself is born. Because of all these components that make up this unique individual that they call a leader. Because as you describe it, and that's when I read the book, and that's why I say I read these kind of books, and it takes me an awful long time, because I'm constantly thinking and bringing it into my own life and into my philosophies, limiting beliefs in that sense. But leadership entails so much more, and you can't really put it down as you would do with management and say management about all control and all of these kind of. Leadership is not there. If I ask 10 people about leadership, and I'm certain you've done that, and you'll get 10 answers. Because at the end of the day, leadership, you can't really touch it. You just experience it. When you meet these phenomenal leaders, profound leaders like in South Africa, in an example, Nelson Mandela. I mean, it's just the presence of that individual defines him as a leader, not even having said a word. Because they just personify it. All of what you shared in your book, and you talk about the philosophies of those, it's part of those people's makeup. It's part of their toolkits. That's the way they think and about things. And if you challenge them, they may not even know where it comes from. It is just the presence there, that they just know about it. And that makes leadership so exciting for me. And when I talk about, vision with imagination, and sorry that I expand on my philosophies here in terms of vision with imagination is exactly that. I talk to leaders, I talk to management, I talk to entrepreneurs and saying, you've got to create this imagined future for yourself. Something that hasn't existed before. Because if it's existed before and somebody else has thought about it, it's out there. It's like karma, it's out there. It's known knowledge. It's nothing new. You need to create something else. And how you put it together, don't try to explain it. Just create it. Just be it. Develop it. Because if you wanted to explain it, you are going to try to strategize from the ground level up, from those things that you know about. And I actually want you to talk and think and philosophize about things that by all definition hasn't existed before you started thinking about it. You're creating it as you go along. And thanks for sharing that about your book. I mean, it's, I read about the omnipresence and the omniscient and the omnipotent, complete being, complete knowing, and complete doing. It's so much more than you shared with us. And for those that's listening, I'd say to you guys, if you can, and I'm certain you'll share with us where they can find your book and how they could communicate with you, because I'm quite happy if you share with us how we could, the listeners out there can contact you if they find that there's a resonance between their beliefs, their philosophies, and your viewpoints. Just tell us, where can they find a copy of the book?
I had it online. I took it off because I need to make some edits in it. I will create a paperback edition format as well. That's planned for this year. But of course, they can contact me, and then we can work out a way that I can share an ebook version of it. And to talk a bit more about what you mentioned about creating a vision and executing on that vision and implementing what you learn from visioneering quest, so to speak. I also created a course on that last year. That's also available, and people can contact me on LinkedIn, and then if they are interested in that, they can. Then I can point them to the appropriate sites, or we can work out something as a deal for a mastermind group that they get the materials as well. What I have now is a starter package for I call it the Philanthropy Leader Blueprint, and there it all comes together, what I did in the past years, and that you can find on the philanthropyleaderblueprint.com. That's it's a low price starter package, and the concepts we talk about, vision, leadership, philosophical development, and then implementing it in a philanthropic way. That's all in that package.
Fantastic, Mauritz. I thanks for sharing that, and I'm quite comfortable that people through this podcast, because we've got so much in common, and what you're sharing with us is exactly in line, and I learned so much from you. I appreciate that, and I hope you get a lot of interest from this chat about your philosophies. Is there anything at this stage? I mean, as I said, we spoke about leadership and mastermind. Something that you may think that we've missed that you would like to share, to add to the two concepts coming together, leadership, masterminds. You want to share with us?
What I learned from you is your the experience you brought from HR that you've been active with, and your take on leadership coaching as beyondership, and training people into that, and really owning that term beyond and beyondership. And I think it's really important that people let it sink in, what it actually means to go beyond. In philosophy, they call it to transcend, and that has many directions, but you make it really tangible, implementable, and concrete for people from where they are now, and then actually reaching higher levels of their own potential. And I'm really grateful that we got acquainted and share our ideas and thoughts about it. It's a mutual learning experience. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mauritz. It was really fantastic having you online and listening to your wisdom. I'm always astounded at what you say. Approaches. Once again, sharing, and Ivan, thanks for setting this up. Much appreciated. Thanks for your time once again.
Thank you, everyone. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Mauritz, what I learned today from you was the Mastermind 5. That was an interesting concept where as soon as you get to 3 or 6, you duplicate and you go on to 3, because I imagine the focus is going to be better. Thank you so much for everybody watching this. Thank you for Mauritz making time for us today, all the way from, where are you from, Mauritz?
The Netherlands, near the city. It's the Silicon Valley of the Netherlands.
all the way from Netherlands. Thank you so much for making time, and also Bertie for facilitating this conversation. Remember, if you have any questions for any two of these gentlemen, please post it. We're distributing this on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, please post it there, and we will make sure that you get answers to your questions. Bertie, thank you so much for coming out today. Mauritz, thank you. And we will see you again. Hopefully we have our next booking for next week. And just watch the notifications on Bertie's platforms for what time they are going to go live. Thank you, and we'll see you again next week.